Thank you, everybody, for joining another episode of Locked Up and Locked Out, the podcast. This is a different feel. We have some great guests on the show today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in the family of Locked Up and Locked Out. On my left is Mr. Rex and Mr. Carl and Ms. Harris and Mr. Don, all great professionals of each and one of their fields, who chose to be here with us and tackle some really hard topics. So let's get busy and locked up. So in today's crisis in which we find ourselves in, with brothers and sisters coming home,
I said I've seen a lot of homelessness with men and women transitioning back to society. I've found some investors that were able to open up some sober homes, right? So we established, we pilot one house and see how it went with 16 beds. Got full pretty quick.
Okay.
They opened up another house. And then we were able to bring all the wraparound services from the agencies that are providing these services to the house for those individuals, so we could fill in the gaps in between why, the needs that they needed.
Now, how are we able to access these
resources
that you have?
Yeah, so I'm like a community outreach person.
Right.
Go to different network meetings and stuff and just promote. The Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, DEMAS,
Okay.
they have a list of all the certified houses that on their website. Throughout the state.
Okay.
So the 5 regions of Connecticut. So you will find the different houses and the availability of beds there, and the houses for men and women that are available. I work directly with Tomcats.
Okay.
Tomcats, they have 2 houses in Manchester. They're looking to open up a 3rd house now, and they're considering the house to be for women because the other 2 houses are for men.
Okay. Mr. Carl, our children today are finding themselves in peril. How can, as fathers, mothers, uncles, aunts, and community officers work hand in hand to rectify the situation, whereas we're bringing youth programs back into the cities where they're most needed?
Yeah, so first, thanks for the invite. I think it's important to have a law enforcement perspective, right? And after 29 years in law enforcement, I found that we can't do it ourselves. Right. And that the biggest thing that we do where the city I work in is we share our information. We share our information with everybody that provides services and works hard to keep these young men and women out of jail. Right. And keep these young men and women interactive and working towards a better goal. We were talking about it before. Unfortunately, the kids of today don't value life like where I don't think they're understanding you pick up a gun and what the circumstances are. And I think as law enforcement, the biggest thing we need to do is take the first step and go to other agencies and go to people that are providing services and say, we're worried about Tommy, we're worried about Billy, we're worried about these certain kids, and that they're the ones that need help. And I think that's a community approach to keeping people out of jail.
Yeah, I also think getting the fathers and mothers that are incarcerated involved as well, some way, somehow. I know it might be far-fetched, but it takes a community to raise our children, and it's like a crisis that keeps on giving because they're getting younger and younger, and we must do something that's different, because continuing the same way and trying to figure out what are we doing wrong, we just don't have that luxury. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we in my agency work really hard with street outreach workers, and most of the street outreach workers are people that returning citizens, right? And they have that background. And then we also reach out to people who grew up in the same neighborhood but didn't get in trouble.
Right.
So to show these kids, hey, you can grow up here and you don't have to pick up a gun or be involved. And I think it's a important mix to have both.
Absolutely.
All hands on deck to help us get these kids safe and in school and moving forward.
Right. Ms. Harris, what do you see a need in our communities abroad with brothers and sisters trying to piece their life together and come back into society?
That's such a great question. I think reintegration is more than just logistical, right? I think it's a deeply emotional process. And so I would say mental health.
Yes.
I would say encouraging people to reach out and to try it. I think historically, people who look like us
Shy away.
I'll pray it away, or I'll use a behavior and I'll deal with what I'm feeling, but I'm not going to talk about it. And I think there has to be a certain conversation wrapped around the importance of mental health, and it makes you stronger and not weaker.
I'm definitely an advocate of seeking mental health experts, because you many times you don't know what hidden animal is lurking. And when I mean animal, the problems that might have plagued you as a child might bubble up to the surface and have you act unbecoming in settings that's less conducive or less willing to bend. And we don't have that luxury to play around. And
I think, like, related to that, I mean, we had conversations before, and so a mental health intervention at a young age, I think, saved me.
Yes.
Right? Because I think it was when I was in third grade, like I grew up in Harlem, and my mother was like, yo, there's something wrong with this boy. We got to get him like to talk with some people. And they took me to a child psychologist at Harlem Hospital. I just remember like there were white men who had on these white lab coats and were asking me to like look at these pictures and to write certain things and draw certain things. They spoke with my principal, they spoke with my teachers, and they were like, there's nothing wrong with him. He's experiencing trauma. Right. And so this is during the time of the crack cocaine epidemic in New York City and what was happening there. And so if I'm walking to school in the morning and they're pulling a sheet over someone who had just been killed, that's not normal. Right. But this is what we're seeing. Or if I'm walking home, like, again, like, with my grandmother and they start shooting, we got to go ducking between cars, let them finish, and then walk into the building. Like, that's not normal. And so they were like, put him into martial arts, and maybe it'll channel some of that trauma into something that was more beneficial. And so, I started studying Goju-Ryu at the age of around 8 or 9, and learned, meditation, and learned how to discipline my body and channel that energy into something positive. But without that intervention, I could have later on been labeled as something wrong with me or a troubled kid. But that intervention and seeking medical or mental health advice, I think it was one of the things that helped save me and correct my path.
Because to your point, I believe we have to be that intervention. Like, if not now, when? If not us, who? It's scary when a child is walking home and walking into a house where there's nothing in the refrigerator, or it's cold outside and it's colder inside. We have to identify, we have to wrap our arms around these children and say, yo, listen, we're going to come up with a solution. We're going to help you right now, not tomorrow, but right now. Because this is what stems and breeds the anger and the resentment that he might have nice clothes on, and I'm going to school with hand-me-downs from Goodwill or something, It's not a fashion show, but when a child sees these things, they identify it as being better than, meaning something, versus having an education to get you where you need to be, allowing that to be the vehicle and the roadmap to success. And it's painful when you see a child killing another child and having a father that's dingling in prison that can't do anything to change the outcome, or even sometimes be able to even go to a funeral due to disciplinary, issues or lockdown or something like that. The psyche around these things are very convoluted but tied in to one another, to whereas it's passed down somewhat, if I'm not speaking out of turn or mistaken.
You just have to ask questions of, like, a lot of times people will say, what's wrong with that kid?
Right.
But the question should be, what happened to that kid?
Yes.
Right? Because no child in their right mind is going to kill someone, right? Unless that was an option that they felt was their only viable option. And so it's easy, if you're never in that situation, to be on the outside and look at and judge it. But we talk about, like, the idea of a rational choice. Like, there's this theory called rational choice theory, that you look at your situation and you make a choice. To the outside looking in, it may not seem rational, but when you weigh the odds, and your choices are constrained, right? Bill Gates, his kids don't have to make the same choices that a young kid growing up in New Haven has to make.
Absolutely not.
Right? And so choices are constrained by the context of the environment that you live in.
And I think what I have most identified as a mental health professional is that people have not been taught how to think their way through something,
Right.
opposed to work your way physically through it, right? It's a big difference, especially our young Black men.
Right.
Teaching him how to think through it, and that goes down to the example that you've provided in terms of you studying and being able to meditate and really go inward. It's always presented in a corny way.
Right.
But it's real.
No, it's
tangible.
Yeah.
And it's possible.
For me, doing 30 years, I personally had to look the man in the mirror, so to speak. There's some things that you have to straighten out. Being a street person, dibbling and doing things that you should have no business doing, put you in an arena to where you can get set up for other things, and it doesn't make it right. But you don't see that. You're not thinking clear. A 13-year-old can't think as an adult. An adult shouldn't be thinking as a 13-year-old. You should come into your very existence as a man and understand, okay, it's not feasible for me to wear my pants down, because that's not what men do. Like, it's just certain things that as a man you change. As a man thinketh, as a man doeth. And I said to myself, if I ever was able to get my life back, reclaim my freedom, because I was free mentally, but the physical was locked dormant. And I was like, I gotta give back. I gotta help those that's there understand that it's a bigger picture, and step into your greatness, because your greatness is waiting for you to step into it. And having people of like-mindedness and understanding, some people need help, more help than others. And have a listening ear to hear my problems and come up with some solutions to them problems. And that's what screams to me through these children that's wondering, don't nobody love me, don't nobody care. That's not true. It's a disconnect, but we gotta connect. And it's so many things that's tied, and we just have to do a better job at connecting the dots to whereas they're meaningful.
I think that going back to the mental health piece, being exposed to what you mentioned, right? When we look at the backstory of people I've worked with, when we look at the backstory, some real horrific stories they have, right? Without saying names, I got a gentleman that I worked with that he witnessed his father chop his mother up at a young age, right? So then he gets taken and from a family member, and then he goes and gets molested. So now he starts shooting up heroin. So when we understand talking about that escape, right? That's the only reality he knows. So like the drugs really help him like trying to manage life. But if we didn't know that backstory to start getting him the help he needs, right? We don't understand that backstory, and for him willing to open up and talk to someone about what happened to him, then we start piecing together the person, right? And then we'll see, it's work to be done, because what he's been exposed to at the age of 5 already, and then we see him at 12 already. It's been some years of that dysfunction that was going on in the neighborhood, the dysfunction that was going on in the home, and then it led to this, right? So when we listen to the backstory of most of the men and women that we work with, there's a lot of trauma associated to the behaviors, right?
Absolutely.
And then when we don't listen to it, then we keep adding to that.
Yeah.
We keep adding to that. So definitely, the mental health is key to addressing, and how we could do that also in schools, right? Because we have classrooms in elementary schools and we have classrooms in junior high schools that are considered at-risk youth, right? So most of these youth that are considered at risk, what are we doing in that classroom for them, right? And if they in and out of detention center already in middle school, right? What do you think the outcome's going to be if we're not addressing those underlying issues?
For me, when I was young, they'll say, "Oh, he's bad." Send him to urban youth. Urban youth, they'll put you in a classroom. So you stay in this classroom until the bell ring, and then you go home. Nothing was taught. There's no education going on.
Right.
The only education is a basketball, let off some steam, and do what you want to do.
I think we have to overcome the stigma of getting mental health, right?
Exactly.
Especially in certain communities.
Absolutely.
And I think, in any community, there's a stigma, especially the law enforcement community. We don't talk about our bad stuff and we end up committing suicide. And I think it's even worse in underprivileged communities where you would mention it, turning to prayer, when really they need some serious mental health help. And I think we try to do it, like part of working with parole, juvenile probation is getting that mental health piece. But there's parents that need that for these kids.
Absolutely.
So we've had to almost like, how do you can't force them, right? But that is something that's very crucial. There's not a person in some of these communities that's not traumatized. So how do we get over that, And it's tough. And, we don't give up. We keep pushing mental health services. But I think we need to get together with the parents and the community and say, how can we get this to be normal to get mental health?
If children see people that look like them coming into their neighborhood and talking to them, and just hammering, listen, you're better in what you're doing, and getting to the grassroots of what the issues are and why they're acting in the manner in which they're acting. If you spend one day with them, I guarantee you will get to the bottom of what's going on. Because if you're willing to listen, they're willing to tell it. You just got to be attentive, you know what I'm saying, and understanding what they're saying in so many words. Just the not knowing scares them. It's like, man, I'm not sharing what's going on with a stranger, you know what I'm saying? You gotta be present, like show them like I'm here, man. Whatever. And you can cuss me out or whatever. I'll be here tomorrow at the same time. So now that shell starts to open up.
Consistency.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it is. You gotta be consistent.
It's hard too when the kid thinks that DCF is going to come into the picture, right?
Right.
And they're going to be taken away, regardless of the situation at home. They're still going to be taken away from the people that they love. Right. So they're going to be removed and put somewhere else.
Right.
So it's a lot of factors that play into this, you know. But again, I go back to what we could do at an elementary level already. What curriculums could change to, in a way, start addressing that message, right? You know, through reading or whatever they're learning, right? How this looks and the impact it has on us.
But when you talked about like that case where the young person was dealing with that trauma, I think one of the things that's important for people to realize is that if any of us was born in that situation, we probably would be shooting up as well, right? Because a lot of times we like, oh, it's them, it's them. It's like, no, if we're born in the same condition, we will more than likely be doing the same thing, right? Because that's what it was. His decision to shoot up wasn't just, hey, I want to get high. He was running from something, right? And so, you know, when I teach my class inside of prison, like, so I think it was 2 semesters ago, I had 15 students, and if you added up all of their sentences, it added up to like 768 years for 15 people, right? And then when they write about their stories, and people will probably tired of hearing me saying this, is that like they're fighting for a second chance, but they were never given a first chance, right? Because some of them have similar stories to the one that you just articulated. And it's like, what else could we have expected? The other thing that people don't know is, like, if you think about like how much it costs for us to incarcerate a young person, right? Let's say, I'm not sure what it is in the state of Connecticut, but I know when I was in New York, it was over $150,000, right? Because you had to have all of the services, school and all of that stuff. What happens if that money is put in the front end of a child's life, like that type of an investment, right? And so those are the questions that I think that we have to ask, like, you know, where are the resources? When cuts are happening, they're taking away sports, they're taking away music, they're taking away theater, and those are the things that actually help people escape without using the substance, right? And so those are some of the things that we have to consider. And sometimes we're searching for the answers, but we're not asking the right questions about what's going on.
Well, I think it's important to call it like it is, too. You make a good point, but prison is a business. It's a huge business, and people send their children to college based off of the decisions that some people make. And I think if we stretch that out and really reach the parent, because we're talking about the youth, but we have to also reach the parent, and have them understand that your child is getting ready to be a commodity. And that's just what it comes down to. We can't skip school. Your point is perfect, and I agree with you. But that education at school starts at home. It starts at home. And sometimes parents don't have it.
Right.
They're empty. They just don't have it for whatever reason, right?
They've been through trauma.
Because they've been through trauma. But I think when people see an example, so if they see us now, they're going to just say off the rip, you don't know what I'm going through.
Right.
But me personally, I come from a dirt road. I just managed to build a paved road. And many of us have done that, right? And so we can be a shining example. Let's start with the parents to say, I've been in your situation and it took a whole lot of work to get out of it. But if you're still standing, then you have an opportunity to make a change.
You had mentioned earlier about the parents incarcerated, how they could help and things like that, right? But I don't know how many men right now we have incarcerated in the state of Connecticut, but I always think about that. And I think about not all of them having a kid, but let's say we have 8,000 men incarcerated. That's 8,000 kids without the dad out. Right. And let's say the parents as well, right? So there are programs that come, parenting programs that come in to the facilities and stuff, and it's a reading program. This one that I know about called Click, right? And they connect the child from the age of either, I think we'll say it starts at 5, it goes to 17. and they both get the same book, dad or mom and child, whatever it is. They both get the same book, and it gives them a platform to start a conversation probably that would never have started. So there's programs in place, but we need to see more programs like that.
So, to your point, I remember I'm a father who had a son who I wrote every day. Every week, he had 5 letters at his residence, and many of them came back null and void. But it didn't stop me from doing my part.
Right.
And the return on that was him now graduate from college, giving back, helping kids in other cities, playing basketball through basketball, and he's a beacon. And then to your point earlier about the mental health aspect of everything, it's so painful when you see somebody just stuck and they can't get past go because either they're mentally incompetent in the point that there's so many things that destroy them that they can't help their children.
I don't think they're incompetent. I think that they just lack the tools.
Yes, better words. Pardon me. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like we gotta help in each and every way that we can. When we see somebody struggling, we gotta go to their aid, man, because it's a lot of pain. And just like with the people that's on SNAP that was denied the ability to eat, like you can't be a humane person and say I'm for y'all, but do something like that just to restrict a certain group of people from. I mean, you say a couple days or a week, or not a day or 2 days, but that's 2 days that these kids didn't eat. Previous to that, how many days before that was to kick in? So you have these kids going on the streets and getting it any way that they can. So there is another dilemma that's being perpetrated on these kids, and they don't even know why they're being attacked.
Right.
Well, I think that shows the segregation of our societies, right?
Yeah.
When I deal with young kids in gangs in New Haven, I say to them, if I grew up here, I would join a gang too, and walk into school and seeing blood on the street and whatnot. But if I could move you and your family to Madison, you wouldn't experience that trauma.
Right.
I don't know the answer, but I think we have to really seriously look at that, because you even mentioned it before. What's the root cause of the problems? They're seeing this trauma. It's not being treated. Their family is going through this trauma. Their fathers or uncles might not even be around because they're imprisoned. And how do we fix this as a society? Because we're not being fair to segments of our society that have to endure more than the other people do.
Yeah, and I think some people don't know what's happening. In some of the work that I do, working with people who are re-entering, like we did this activist-inspired play, and we recorded the stories of 7 men who had been previously incarcerated, and turned it into a script, and they performed it in front of people, lawyers, judges, students, and people were connected. And people who are outside of that space who don't necessarily have any connection to prison were like, oh my gosh, I didn't know, right? And so if you're not connected to it, and if you don't know about it, there's nothing for you to care about, right? Because in our minds, we're told that like the people in prison, they deserve to be there, right? That they're monsters. We need to be afraid of them. But we don't understand or ask the questions about what's happening in the communities that are leading people to this space, right? Like what happens when you remove resources from areas? What is going to be the fallout, right? And so that's the piece. And so you talked about Madison. I don't know the demographics of Madison, but I'm assuming it's a little bit different than in New Haven. But then even like when I first moved to Connecticut, like I worked with students who lived in the hood of New Haven. Then I was taking like a right and a left, and I saw some of the biggest houses that I've ever seen in my life, right? And so this juxtaposition of affluence and the lack of resources and different paths that people are taking, right? And it's not because of the kids, or that they're not making choices because they want to do it. They're making choices because of the way that they are being influenced. And how do we interrupt? Right. How do we become consistent interrupters of what we see that's happening?
I'd like to introduce Judge Clifford Grave, a great man who's on air with us. Judge Clifford.
Thanks for inviting me. I've been enjoying and learning from all the panelists, and I've had them for pulling this together. And thank all the panelists for the work that you do. This is really God's work that you're doing. You know, we're not perfect servants. We're public servants, trying to be difference makers and change agents as best we can. But I would say this, a couple of things. One, I heard the last piece, I think that was going about resistance and resilience. I've been teaching at Gateway Community College for about 25 years in African-American history. And the two words that I start and end my class with about our struggle has been the struggle of resistance and the struggle for resilience. Those two words capture more than any two words, I think, in the vocabulary, the history of struggle that African-American people of color, certainly, and certainly African-Americans in particular, have experienced and continue to experience resistance to oppression, to racism, to discrimination, to hostility, and the resilience to bounce back, no matter how many times we get knocked down. And I think, and we're quite frankly in a period of time in our history where the resilience, as was stated earlier, it has to be incorporated into being, it's in our DNA already, but we have to reiterate that and stress that too when we look in the mirror every morning when we wake up, but also to everybody we come in contact with, particularly young people. I've been very blessed and fortunate. I'll be 73 years old if God lets me live to Christmas Eve. And I've seen a lot, done a lot, been exposed to a lot. And people have a tendency to look at degrees, and I think it will, a professor on the panel, and look at that and have that define you. And I would say to folks, as you reiterated here, we're more than just what's behind our name, letters behind our name. I've had cousins and blood relatives who served 20, 30 years in prison for murder, for robbery, for drug dealing, family, blood, young brothers that I grew up with. And for the grace of God, go I. It could have been me, just as easily could have been me. And they could just have easily, under different circumstances, become a lawyer, become a judge. So life is so fragile, and things can happen, as we all know, for different reasons. I think this is what when we deal with our young people, it's important to stress to them the importance of being focused in life. Everyone didn't have to get a college degree, no, but you have to have some focus and some purpose in life. If you want to be a barber or a mechanic or a computer technician or have your own podcast, fine. You don't necessarily need a degree for all that, but certainly you have to be focused and pay some attention to what's going on in life. I know there's so many, this struggle, I'm not, forgive me, I'm all over the place, but what does concern me and what I've seen and observed and witnessed is the fact that as a student and teacher of history, and when we look at where we are and where we've been, this struggle we've been engaged in for forever, since we stepped foot on this piece of land, is multi-layered, multifaceted. And so what we see now with the side effects, the derivative impact, the derivative effects of centuries of injustice, of indignity, of maltreatment, of mistreatment by society as a whole, in institutional and individual racism, sexism, classism that have been heaped on us. And so our children that we deal with today are feeling the effects of that. So when I teach my Gateway class, 12 students in my class now at Gateway, all these are high school students who want to go to college. And I ask the question, is all of you know the answer already? I have a show of hands. How many know someone's been shot? Every hand goes up. All who know someone is incarcerated, every hand goes up. Everyone who knows someone's been killed, every hand goes up. Every hand. And this is just a sample. This is just a small modicum and a sample of students' behavior from different schools, different neighborhoods. But everybody knows. So when you talk about trauma, someone talk about mental health and trauma, we have no idea. None of us do. As smart as we think we are, and as studious as we believe we are, none of us on this panel, I don't think anybody on this earth knows the impact that the violence and and actually the trauma, this is the best word, that these children are incorporating now into their psyche. And what bothers me, and it bothers all of you, when I ask the students, well, what are we gonna do about it? What do you plan to do about it? And they say to me, Mr. Graves, nothing. There's nothing we can do about it. They've accepted this, that this is their way of life, that they have to live with the fact that their classmates from kindergarten and from middle school and high school are gonna die or go to jail. They've accepted that. So they're trying to carve out their own niche and say that they're survivors, but that's not the way it should be. This has got to be the first and maybe second generation of our people on this earth, in this land rather, that has no hope. Have no hope. And that scares me and concerns me, should concern all of us.
There's a lot of great people in our communities abroad. Let me get that perfectly straight and out there. It's not, I'm not here trying to beat down our people or people that's been through a lot of things, but what we are here to do is come to some solutions or try to wrap our minds together to help the next generation of youth and brothers and sisters that's coming home to continue the work that's being done now. And many times they get lost in translation, but overall, that's the goal for this table, on this round table meeting, for us to come to some type of agreement. One is that we need help, and we need more good people like y'all and people in the community that's standing up each and every day, man and woman, fighting to change the common narrative of our communities.
And so one of the things that I was about to say, Your Honor, I mean that the judge is saying, hope.
Yeah.
If you remove hope, all else becomes lost.
Right.
Right, because when he was talking about history, and so if we look at particularly thinking about those who are descendants from enslaved Africans in this country, if you listen to the music, if you listen to the stories and the narratives from people who were enslaved, there was this sense of hope, right? There was this sense that something was going to be better. Like, we're going to fight, we're going to resist. If you look at the life of Harriet Tubman, there was a sense of hope, right? If you look at Rosa Parks, Coretta Scott King, there was a sense of hope.
That led to a plan.
Yeah, and so it was a sense of hope. And so if hope was removed, I think the movement would have been stagnant, right? So if you look at the Black Panther Party, they did it because there was a belief that something could be better, and they had to do something in order to make that happen. King and folks wouldn't have marched across the bridge if there wasn't a sense of hope that things would be better. So now, if we're saying and seeing in conversations with young people who have accepted the reality that they're existing in, and if hope is removed, that's something else that we're fighting against. Right.
But let's also remember that there's a small component that is missed. When you ask the youth, what are you going to do? And they say nothing, we have to remind them that they are doing something because they're in those chairs.
Right. They're being
right. They are doing something, and they may not recognize the small steps that they're taking, because oftentimes people want to see the whole picture.
Right.
They don't want to see the puzzle pieces.
Right.
But they are the puzzle pieces.
Sure indeed.
And so they need to be encouraged, and again, going back to that word, resilient. Because regardless of what you've seen, you're sitting inside that seat.
Right.
And that seat is yours. You own that seat because you earned it. And everyone has a space at a table.
Absolutely.
And if it's not, create one.
That's right. That's
I think exposure too. Exposure, right? Like what are we doing in these communities and stuff? One of the things I've done with some kids out working from a rough neighborhood, I connected with a bike organization, right? And most of these kids that I was looking to work with, most of these kids were the single family homes, right? And I got like 16 bikes, and I found a thing called Airline Trail, right? It goes from Maine to Florida.
Oh, wow.
right? Each state is responsible for it. But I would go on that trail, right? Hey, young kids are out, right? But I'm like, oh, slow down, right? But then we'll form a little circle. How you doing? What's going on? How you doing? You know what I'm saying? So then the group dynamic started, right? And you learn these kids, right? Then you make those deposits, right? You make those deposits. So there's nothing that you cannot do.
Absolutely.
He'll hold on to that, put that in his pocket, regardless of what's happening. He's like, so we go from hopelessness to hope now, right? We go from hopeless to hope because, that man told me that, right? That person told me that. And next thing you know, God gets all the glory for everything I do. But I'm getting invited to high school graduations, and these are the kids that
That's amazing.
pretty much were not destined to make it, right? So I think that we need to see that. We need to see how you made it out, how we made it out from these neighborhoods. Because I remember being on public assistant. I remember getting cheese and crackers. I remember the jelly. I remember the lunch job. You know what I mean? But again, we had that sense of hope, right? And for me, growing up in the Bronx, sometimes I just go to Manhattan and I see how other people live, right? And I'm like, all right, that gave me, so there's something in this world that I could get, right? How I was gonna get it at the time, I didn't know, but that gave me, deposited something in me to continue chipping away, right? Going back to Harriet Tubman, I don't know if this is a quote, but it said, I freed thousands of slaves, right? I could have freed thousands more only if they knew they were slaves, right? So I think that, there's definitely a lot of work to be done because some of us don't know that we don't know. And then, life expectancy in some neighborhoods are 16, 17? That's as long as I'm gonna live. Then it becomes a survival piece that needs to be addressed. No, that's not what it is. But the judge said these kids going into college, right? High school kids already saying it's just about survival mode. So are we even thinking longevity, goal setting? If it's just as we're surviving, let us just get through today.
I know many of us.
But no, just because you had said something about like what happens, right? Because so if you talk to like a kid at like 5 or 6, like what do you want to be when you grow up? They're like, I want to be an astronaut, fireman, police officer, or something like that, right? You talk to that same kid in 8th grade and say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they say, I'm just trying to make it, right? Like what happens
In that time.
In that time.
I think what was important with Judge Graves is the fact that, and your point, that these kids are sitting in a classroom, you know what I'm saying? Like they're being educated about African studies, whatever areas that they're going in, they're having some type of thought pattern on where they want to be at in life. They know that they don't want to be there. So they're changing the narrative automatically by sitting there and being studious in the sense of being educated. Education is pivotal, you know what I'm saying? Like it's a must, because without education, you don't know. You just don't know. So to be able to open up a book, find out the things that you don't know or wasn't taught in middle school or high school on things that you should have been taught, it opens your eyes to a different world and have a different sense of pride about oneself. And can't nobody frankly tell you nothing, because what are you saying? I'm very astute. I understand exactly what you're telling me, and that's not right in the Zach. And this is where I get this is that, vice versa. We don't want kids to follow parents that's formerly or incarcerated. We want kids to be kids, have the time to understand what life's all about, enjoy your youth, and then step into the fields and make your parents and your community proud by going forth and paying it forth and being all that you can be, because you're more than the four corners of your habitat. Many times they just believe I'm no better than Bassett and Winchester or what have you. That's a lie. Don't allow nobody to feed you that nonsense. Greatness is in you. Step into your greatness. You know.
And I think they have to see it, because you said exposure.
Exposure, right?
Yeah.
And so, not right now, but one of my favorite cereals used to be Captain Crunch with Crunch Berries, right? And I used to hide them in my house so my kids didn't see it, right? But I would tell them you can eat anything you want, but they couldn't, right? Because they weren't exposed to the Captain Crunch with Crunch Berries because it was hidden, right? And I think that's what we do, right? We say you can be anything you want, but we don't show them anything else, right? Like you said, you went from the Bronx to Manhattan, like, oh, wow, right? When I was 16, I was in like this youth choir in Harlem at Mount Moriah Baptist Church, and these Brazilians used to come in and they would sit up in the balcony and watch. And there was this news executive or whatever from Brazil who came in and was like, I want to bring this youth choir to Brazil. What? Right? And so we got like an all expense trip paid to Brazil. I think we were there for like 13 days for free, and we got like a stipend. And so you take in these kids from Harlem to Brazil, like we're connecting with young people there, like we see in the favelas and all of this stuff. Our idea of what the world was transformed, right? So I knew, it's like, okay, there's another world outside of Lincoln Projects. Like literally there's another world out there, right? Because growing up in Harlem, I didn't need to leave Harlem. I could get my shopping, I could go outside, I could do whatever right in Harlem. But to go from Harlem and see Brazil, to be exposed to that and know, okay, that there's another world out there. And that's why, like, I do a lot of international stuff now, because that seed was planted then. Like, there's another world out there, and that we're connected to people all over the globe. And my experience, although tough, when I met some of the kids from the favelas, it was like, the project is looking real good, right? And it wasn't about, making myself feel better, but it let me know that, like, my struggle was relative to other people who were experiencing similar things.
I tell you, this has been an eye-opener for me personally. We look at politics, how politics plays major parts in decisions, and how people are looked at, and how money is distributed equally, supposedly, through the country in different areas. But as you become older and more wiser, you know that to be not the truth. When you see a child in the middle of winter going to school with a summer spring jacket on, with clogs on, it's not by choice. You know what I'm saying? That child want to be warm just like everybody else want to be warm. But the ability to do such is something totally different. And then you have mothers that's working 2 shifts to make ends meet, that want to be a part and be active in their children's life, but not being allowed to be that parent, you know what I'm saying, that has 2 family household with a father and a mother, and everything is functioning properly. Or you have both parents in the household, whereas they're not furnished the proper jobs that they're able to work just because of a zip code.
It can be overwhelming if you let it be overwhelming. So we have to carve out our own niche, or niches, if you will, and figure we do what we can do, the best we can do. We can't change the structural and systemic racism that's been entrenched in this society for 400 years. But what we can do is the best we can. Each one, teach one, each one, reach one, save as many lives as we can. But we can't save everybody. I've come to the conclusion now, we can't save everybody, because everybody ain't savable. Those who want to be saved, we save, we reach out to and help them. But we do the best we can with what we have, be encourage, motivate, and give, and do the best we can. And that's all we can do. I think we can. And I think that's incumbent upon all of us.
It's a lot of work to be done. I just thank each and one of y'all for coming out tonight and shedding y'all truth on a really tough and touchy subject. I asked y'all on more than one occasion, please pick up the phone when I call. Come on, Locked Up and Locked Out, the podcast, individually or another roundtable discussion. And Judge Cliff, thank you very much, sir, for taking your time and each one of your times, which is valuable time, to share with the listening audience. Thank you, everybody, for joining another episode, the final season of Locked Up and Locked Out, the podcast. And a special thanks to Jen Evans and the West Hartford Community Active Network for their part in making this happen tonight, and their team especially. Thank you all.